Hey, welcome back to the fifth episode of the Sublime Spotify series. In the last video, we added tests and we implemented the Spotify settings manager. So we already had a Sublime settings manager that was taking care of the files, and now we have a Spotify settings manager that is taking care of the keys. So this is the commit, and this is the main change. We added the settings manager that has methods for retrieving the refresh interval in seconds, and also for retrieving the value of the is-enabled key. And we also implemented the toggle functionality, and we added commands over here to the, we added commands for toggling, which is right, this one. And we also added that to the Sublime menu, of course. All right, we also displayed a message in the status bar of sublime-text when we enable and when we disable the plugin, and we wrote a bunch of tests. By the way, I forgot to mention that this status message method on the active window only displays the message for I think 4 seconds, and then the message disappears. This is not the method that we are going to use eventually for displaying the current track. I went ahead and I made a few changes off the record, but since we're tracking everything in Git and uploading everything to GitHub, nothing is off the record. So as you see, we have 7 commits. So this is the one that we just discussed, and I also went ahead and did a few refactoring. So you can always go and check. So even if I do something off the camera, I can't do it off the record because everything gets recorded. But I did only small things. I removed parentheses, and I renamed the key. I used the word bool instead of boolean. I also added a function to figure out if the plugin is disabled, which is just a helper. It just says not enabled. It's a common practice to add helper methods like this. I renamed set to specified. Basically, I cleaned up a few things, and I added tests. So as of right now, let me switch to Sublime real quick. We should have around 10 tests. There we go. Yeah, we have 10 tests, and we have 5 for the interval in seconds, and we have 4 for the ease enable. Oh, we have 6 for the interval in seconds, and 4 for the enabled ones. And you can check them all out. They're all here. And in this commit, I forgot to change a few things. So if we take a look again, so this one was the one that we recorded together, and this one was the refactoring that I showed you. And then I fixed a few typos over here. So I forgot to rename bool in one of the other places, and I changed some string. So nothing super critical. Okay. So today we're going to write a server. We're going to write a server in Python, and I will explain briefly why we need a server. So today we're going to talk about OAuth 2, but only a little bit because the next video is dedicated completely to OAuth 2. Okay. Let me just switch to a better picture. That's much nicer. All right. So what is OAuth 2? I'm not going to explain the whole thing basically, but the purpose of OAuth 2 is to grant permissions to someone who might not be the person whom the resource belongs to, right? So in our case, for example, we want to access the Spotify API of our Spotify account, right? But it's not really us, it's our plugin that is doing it for us. So we want to give this plugin like only teeny tiny part of permissions that it can access, that it will have access to. And the way it works is basically, it's nothing fancy. In one way or the other, are we going to the Spotify API, right? And we ask it to create a so-called token. A token is just a string, right? So it's just a sequence of characters, which basically represents some sort of like a key, right? And then when we send requests to the Spotify API later to say retrieve the current track, we need to integrate this token into the header, right? So this is like the basics of OAuth 2. And then it depends on the vendor, how the whole process of retrieving the token is handled. There are a few ways. Like for example, I have LifeX bulbs, light bulbs over there that allow me to switch lights and change colors and everything. And if I wanted to control them from the internet, I would just go to the LifeX website and say, give me a token, and they will just generate me the token for me. And then, as I said, we would just be able to include the token in every REST call, and then it's all good. And this token will never expire because technically a never expiring token is a security threat. But in the case of light bulbs, what can happen? Some bad guys can control my lights, right? Not so horrible. So this is why LifeX did it in such a way that it's very easy to generate a token. You just go to the website, say, give me my token, and then you have it, and that's it. In case of Spotify, it's a bit more complicated, and we're going to discuss the whole process in the next video, as I said. For now, let's just go to the Spotify website. So it's developer.spotify.com, and there are a bunch of things that we can do here. We're going to go to the Spotify Web API. And now we're going to click on Authorization Guide. And again, I'll explain the details of that in the next video. But basically, they say, hey, you need an access token. That's all we need to know as of right now. And what we need to know right now is also that there are 3 ways to get the token, and what is important for us is this: access token can be refreshed. So these are the 3 ways: through the authorization code, through client credentials, and through implicit grant. But only one of them allows a token to be refreshed. So Spotify did it a bit more complicated because presumably it's possible to access some private data through their REST API, so they decided to go, the full OAuth 2 route. And in this scenario, the tokens, they expire, right? So basically, what this table says is, if you mean business, do this. You basically don't have any choice, because you want your tokens to be able to refresh the tokens, okay? And this is some complicated flow that we will talk about in the next video, but we need to discuss part of it, and it's here. So what's important for us is this step here. So if you go to the Spotify API and we log in and we say give us permissions to do this and that, then what the Spotify server will do is it will send a response to a URL that we will specify, right? So there will be a redirect URI, right, that we will need to give it, and it will send a request to that URI, and in the end of that URI, there will be the token that we need. So what we will do in our plugin is the following. Actually, hold up, I got a picture for you here. So this is called an activity diagram. So we start over here, and if we already have a token, so if we're in that branch, if yes, we already have a token, then we just display a current track. However, it's implemented, but probably we'll ask Spotify, we'll send another request with the token and whatever. But basically that's it. So if you already have the token, all we need to do is to display the current track. But if we don't have the token, what we will do is we will start a server that we will write in this video, okay? And then we will open the default web browser of our users, right? So whatever they're using, may it be Firefox or Chrome or whatever. And then we'll point their browser to the Spotify OAuth 2 API. Basically, like you've seen in that picture, basically that, request authorization to access data, right? And then the Spotify REST API will answer. It will send a request to our redirect URI with the token, and we will extract the token from the URI, and we will cache it, right? So cache means we're going to put it in the file, and it's going to be a hidden file in the folder of the plugin, and then we'll basically do this thing again, and we see, because our plugin is just a loop, right? So with the next iteration, it's going to say, oh, do we have a token? Well, yeah, we do. So display the current track, okay? So I hope I explained it well enough. So today we're going to implement this server in Python. It's going to be a very simple HTTP server. We're going to write 2 tests for it. But before all of that, we're going to write one test that I forgot to write the last time. And the test is going to be, let's close that one. It's going to be for the settings manager, for the toggle function, for this one. We're going to test if it worked correctly. And I promise you that I'll try not to waste your time with tests. But in this case, I just want to show you guys a very interesting feature in Python. Okay. So let's go to the settings manager, tests, right? And so these are all the private methods, private helpers, and this is where the tests end. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to add just one test. Okay. Just test toggle. Okay. Toggle self. Okay. And so in here, what we'll do is we will have a loader, as you know, the same as we have in other tests like here. In fact, you know, let me just copy paste that. Okay, so this is our loader, and its read function is going to be a lambda. Okay, and its key will be the actual value that it's right now. Let's just say actual value, and introduce that variable right here. So actual value equals true. Let's just say that in the beginning it's true. Okay, and where this is the first time where we'll actually specify the write function. Remember this one. So let's get back to here. Let's have some more space. So the write function, it's just going to be called write, and we will define it right here. Okay, so def write key value, right? Okay, so the idea is that once you know, later we're going to call you know, loader.toggle. Okay, and the idea is that we will have a variable for the value, and we will have the variable for the key, right? And write will modify those variables, and then over here, after we call the toggle, we will just basically assert that these these variables have the values that we need. Okay, in fact, let's write that code first. So let's say self assert equal. So we're going to say actual value is false, right? So basically it was true before, and then we're calling write, and we didn't implement write yet, but basically what write will do is it will set this variable, right? It will flip it, okay? And after that it should be false. What we'll also do is we're going to make sure that the toggle function calls the correct key. Okay, so let's duplicate that and say actual key is sublime Spotify rest, and it's bool, and it's called is enabled, right? So this is our key. So we're not only going to assert that the value is false, but we're also going to assert that the key was that guy, right? Okay. So what will write do? So write will do this: actual key equals key, right? And actual value equals value, right? So the actual one, you know, the actual toggle. Remember, let's actually open it because we already have it, right? So the actual toggle over here, it will basically call write, you know, with this key, which is the same one, right? And this is what we're making sure what it will do. It will flip the value, but it will call write. So as long as we inject the write over here, we know that it's calling it with the correct key and with the correct value, right? So if it was true, then it should call it with false. And this is why we're here, by the way. This is the feature that I wanted to show you. Like usually, this is how you define variables in Python, right? But this is not what we want. We don't want to define a new variable. We want to modify an existing variable. And this is why Python has a special keyword for that. We just say non-local actual key, and the same for the value, right? Actual value. So this lets the Python interpreter know that we're not declaring, that we're not creating a new variable, that we're actually referencing this one, and this one references that one. And this is why we're here. I really wanted to show you this, because usually in other languages, when you define a variable, you don't say I don't know, blah equals 10. Usually you would say val blah equals 10, or var blah, or const blah, or let blah, and or in Java or C# you would say int blah or int blah or whatever. And Python is actually doing that for methods, right? So if blah was a method, we would say def blah, right? And we would return 10. But it decided not to do that for variables, right? Okay. So this was a tiny excursion into Python. Okay. So basically we're almost done. And what we'll also do is we're just going to call toggle again, right? Because we just want to test it back and forth. And after that, the value should be back to true. And it doesn't really make sense to test the key again, but whatever. Let's just test it again. And if I didn't do any silly mistakes, it should be all good now. So test current project. Failed. All right, that's what it says. Non-keyword arg after keyword arg. So we have to say that this is the what we're. Let's just do that. So this is the read, this is the write, obviously. Maybe, why not? Let's just do it way too explicit. Read key actual value. So let's just do read and write. I hope that everyone is happy now. True is not equal to false. Oh, that's interesting. All right. Read does not return that. I always forget this in Python. I don't know why. All right, we're good to go. Okay, 11 tests. So this is a new test that I wanted to show you specifically for this keyword, non-local. Right. Okay, let's close this up. Okay, and let's close the settings manager. Okay. All right, so we're about to write this server. So servers usually they run on a port, okay, and there is a chance that our users, people who usually use Sublime, they're programmers, they might already have some server running on whatever port that we will hardcode. So we're not going to hardcode it, okay? So this will be configurable. We will put it in the settings, but after we write the server, because right now it's not really important. But yeah, basically the redirect URI is just going to be localhost colon whatever port, right? And the user might change the port, but there will be a default port, probably 8080. Okay, and yeah, in the next video I'll explain exactly where to configure that whole redirect URI, like how to tell Spotify to actually call that that URI. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create one test over here. It's going to be called test server. Test server .py. Okay. So let's just start over here. It's going to be a class test server. Okay. And obviously it's a unit test. And since it's a unit test, we need to bring unit test in. Okay, like that. All right. So as I said, we're only going to have one test, and it's going to test the entire round trip. Okay. So solve. Okay. So here's the thing. So remember that image that I just showed you? In fact, let's have the image over here. Let's put it down there. Okay, like that. So we want to start a server, and then we want to open the default web browser and then point the browser to the Spotify OS2 API. So let's start with the Spotify OS2 API. So this is tests. These are tests. So we're obviously not going to go to the actual Spotify API. So what we're going to do is we're going just to pretend that the OS2 URL, or URI, equals some URL. Okay. And as we already discussed, we're going to have the redirect port, and it's going to be, it doesn't really matter, 1337, okay? So we're going to have a function called send OS2 request, okay? Because in the real application, like in the real plugin, we're just going to open the web browser and point it to the Spotify OS2 URI, but in our test we're not going to do that. So we're just going to send an OS2 request, okay? So we're sending an OS2 request, okay, and it gets the URL, okay. And over here we're already going to start to assert things, okay. We assert that the URL that is given to that function is in fact the one that we defined over there, okay. And then we're going to have a timer for 2 seconds, and we're going to say send HTTP request to self, and we're going to start that timer, right? So we delay this for 2 seconds, okay? And this is a function that we haven't even implemented yet, so let's implement it. It's right here, okay. Whoops. Oh, and actually, hold up. We're using a timer, so let's bring it in. It's under threading, import timer. All right. And maybe have that. Okay, let's make the image a bit smaller. All right. So for that, we're actually going to use request from URL lib. And we're going to bring it in at import URL lib dot request, and there's a method called URL open, and we're just going to send it to localhost, because remember, this is what Spotify will do eventually. It will just send a redirect response to that. So what that thing will calculate is basically http localhost column 1337, right? This is what this thing is doing. Okay, this is the same. We're inserting the redirect port. So this is an actual request, right? So an actual request will be sent to an actual server that we haven't even written yet, right? So our server, it will run on localhost, in this case 1337, and it will wait for this request. Okay. So let's actually have our server. Okay, server. And it's going to have just one function. So we're going to have, a static function, a static method, and I'll show you how to implement it later. So instead of creating a server instance, right, and then calling functions, we can just call methods directly on it. So what we're testing here is the function called, or method called, get redirect response, and it will get all of the stuff that we just defined over here, right? So it will know how to send an OS2 request, right? It will know the OS2 URL. Okay. It will know the redirect port, and it will also know how to handle a request. Okay. And we have to tell it how to handle a request. So it's going to be another function called handle. Let me put it down a little. I know you can't fully see it, but it's fine. Okay, so handle, and we'll get the redirect response, which is what basically the whole URL. So the Spotify REST API sends a redirect response, right, to this server, to localhost 1337, and the whole URL is going to be the redirect response. And we're going to later we're going to extract the token from that redirect response. We're obviously not going to do that in our test. And all we're going to do in our test is we're just going to have an assert equal that the redirect response is that. Okay. And by the way, I'm not going to repeat that because usually that's what you want in the test. Like when you're doing asserts, you sort of want to construct the values yourself, because this is also code and there could be a mistake in there. I mean, hell, there can also be a mistake in here, right? Okay, so our test is actually complete. Let's review it for a second. So we have some sort of server that we actually don't even have yet, and in fact, let's bring it in. Remember how we brought in from our settings manager tests? Remember how we brought in this folder? We're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to have it over here, and for that we need OS and sys. And let's put them all over here. Sort them a bit like that for the unit tests. Okay, right? Okay, so there will be a server in the source Spotify folder. It will have a static method called getRedirectResponse. It will know how to send an OS2 request. It will know to which URL to send it. It will know on which port to start even, and it will know how to handle the response, right? So everything is injectable, and this is a very common pattern when you write tests. So you want to be able to reach inside of your code and assert things. Okay. So we can't run this, right, because it's just going to say that server doesn't exist. But let's try. Why not? Yeah, it already says failed, and it says name server is not defined. Okay. Well, let's define it then. So over here in the Spotify folder, whoops, rendering. All right, let's just save it as server.py. Okay, so it's going to be a class server, obviously, right? Actually, let's close that one and bring the test down here. Okay, create some space. Scroll down a bit more. All right, so it needs to be called server. Okay, so it's a class server. And it will have a static method. So the way you do it is there is this annotation static method. And I already know that we did it right because we have syntax highlighting. So yay us. Okay, so it's going to be called getRedirectResponse. Let's just copy paste it because I hate making typos over here. And since Python is a dynamically typed language, we can actually copy paste the whole thing, right? Because we don't need to specify the type as in statically typed languages. Okay, let's not forget the colon. Okay, so this will be a very long function, and the way there's a cool trick in Python if you want to write long functions, is that there is a way to define smaller functions inside of that function, inside of that redirect response method, in such a way that we can read our code top to bottom. And the way we do this is we define another method and we call it the same, but this one doesn't have any arguments. Okay, and then it will have some body, right? But then over here, in the end, the last thing that will happen is we're just going to say get redirect response. Okay, so we're going to call that one. So this is like the a teeny bit of wiring, but apart from that, everything else can be read top to bottom. Okay, so the first thing that will happen is the get redirect response. In the get redirect response method, we're going to actually create a server. So we're going to say server. And we're not only going to create, we're actually going to start up. So you're going to say startup server. And we will give it a handler that we haven't implemented yet. We're just going to call it Spotify redirect URI handler. Actually, it's called URI. Maybe I should call this one also URI. No, that's the OS2 URL. No, it's fine. It's all good. It's all good. Forget it. Okay. Okay, so we're going to create that guy, and we don't even have that guy yet. Okay, so maybe let's create him. It's going to be a def called like that, the function. Okay, and over here it will have a class. We're going to have a class inside of a method, right? So it's going to be very nested, and we're going to call it the same way. Okay, and this guy will extend base HTTP request handler. Okay, which comes from the Python standard library, and we need to import it. So actually, hold on. From HTTP server, which is Python 3, by the way. In Python 2, it's somewhere else, which, by the way, probably this is why our plugin is not going to work on Sublime 2, because I think in Sublime 2 they were still using Python 2. There is a way around this. There is a way to make it work for both versions of Sublime, but I actually don't see a reason why. Most people switch to Sublime 3 anyway. If you really care about Sublime 2, feel free to submit a pull request after this whole series is finished, and if it's something good, I might even make a video about it. All right. Okay, so from HTTP server, import this thing, right? And also later we will need the HTTP server. The HTTP server, so I might include it as well. Okay. So this is the redirect URI handler that extends the base HTTP request handler, and therefore it has to override this function. Okay, so this is a server, right? And once it receives a GET request, it will do this. It will send a response of 200, which is standard HTTP response code, so 200. Okay. It will also send the header, and notice that all of these functions they come from here, and I spelled response wrong. Response, yeah, better this time. Okay, so we're going to send a header. We're going to say content type as text HTML, standard HTTP stuff, and we're going to end headers, very imperative. Okay, and this is where sort of the magic happens. We're going to call this handle function. In our test, handle function is only going to assert that we're giving it the whole URL. So let's do that. So we're going to call handle, and we're going to give it the path, right? So we already know that this one should succeed. Okay. And over here, we're going to have some HTML. As of right now, we're going to say, it's all good. Just close the tab now. Okay. And we're going to say self-write. Self-write to file, write bytes, and it's HTML, and it's UTF-8. So I just called it HTML, but it's not HTML yet. Later we will have some actual HTML. So this is what our users will see after everything is completed, right? So on their website, the URL will be that. It will actually not be that. It will actually be that, and then something like code equals, and then the whole authentication token. It's gonna look something like that. Okay. This is going to be their URL, and on the actual browser page they will see this. It's all good. Just close the tab now. We will actually not see this today, right? All we need to do today is to see this test succeed. Okay, this is all we need to do today. Okay, so the doGet function needs to return. I actually don't remember if we need that, but let's leave it in. Okay, and let's make this one a bit smaller. Let's close the console. And remember, we're in a function here. Okay, so this whole function is going to return an instance of this Spotify redirect URI handler. Okay, so over here, just make sure that it's here, right? It's going to return an instance of that handler. Okay, so it's going to create an instance of that, return it here, and this will be called, this will be passed in as an argument to the startup server function that we don't even have yet. In fact, let's have it. It's going to be here. And again, this is a neat trick in Python. Like usually in the languages that I program in these days, this would not be possible, that you call this function and it's defined over here. But in Python, it works because we're calling it down there, and over here, all of that code has already been evaluated. Okay, so all of these functions, they have already been converted to binary, so they already exist. Okay, and this is this trick that I wanted to show you. Okay, so startup server is going to get this handler, the Spotify redirect URI handler, and it will return this guy, an HTTP server, which is standard Python API, and it gets the URL, which is, if we don't specify it, it's just going to be localhost. Okay, and it gets the redirect port. So now whatever we specify here, which in our test is 1337 over here. So this is how we start the server on this URL with this redirect port, and we give it the handler, right? This one. This is our handler. It's not the handle function. It's this Pythonic base HTTP request handler that we just created, which will in turn call the handle function that we passed in. It's not the easiest code, I understand, but that's what we need to do. At least we can read it top to bottom. Okay. Okay. So the next thing that we will do is, we're still writing this function, get redirect responses, which is sort of like the main function over here. Okay. We're just going to call the send OS2 request. And remember, the production code for that is actually going to start a web browser. So the implementation of this function later will be open the web browser. Okay. And point it to this OS2 URL. Okay, that's all. Okay. The next thing that we will do is we're going to block the current thread until Spotify responds, right? Because it might take some time, and we pass it in, the server over here, and we don't have that function yet. So let's have it over here, right? It's a def, and it takes in a server. Okay, and all it's doing for now is server.handle request, which is, it's just a method that is defined on the HTTP server. So usually if you see Python tutorials, most of them, they run a different one. They call a different method. I don't remember how it's called, but basically it's the one that will start like an infinite loop that, because you don't want a server, usually you don't want a server to accept one request and then die, right? This is not what you want. All right, so usually you want it to run like this in this endless loop and accept requests, right? This is how a usual server looks like. But in our case, that's not what we need. We need this one thing, and then we're going to handle the response, and we're going to kill the server. There's no need to run it. Okay, so that's all we're doing. Handle request, and after that we shut down the server. Shut down server. Okay, which again, it's a function that we didn't implement yet, but we will in a second. Over here, def shut down server, and it gets in a server, and all it's doing is server socket close, which is gonna kill it for good. And basically, except for this HTML thing, we're actually done. Okay, let me do that for a second. So what we have here is right now it's 38 lines, including the imports. Okay. And we're done. This is a whole server. Okay, and we can read it top to bottom. Okay, so we go in, get redirect response. So what's happening? Okay, this is happening. We start up a server, we send an OS2 request, we block the current thread until Spotify responds, and then we shut down the server, right? That's beautiful, right? And then if we don't understand how does startup server work, well, it's right here. Okay, how does send OS2 request work? Well, it's right here. How does block thread works? Well, it's right here. So it's basically it's top down because of that trick where we basically defined a method with the same name. It doesn't have to be the same name. I'm just doing like that, and we're calling it in this very end. So this is where the actual execution of the function starts in the very end. So except for this tiny wiring, we can read the rest of the code top to bottom, which is good. All right, so let's test it. Actually, we need to restart Sublime, remember, because this file doesn't get reloaded. But let's try it. I'm actually super excited. Usually it never works the first time. Unit tested, blah blah blah. Something went wrong. Obviously, name server is not defined. Really? We put it in source Spotify, right? Source Spotify server. And over here, source Spotify server. Oh, we didn't actually import it. That's interesting. So in our tests, we have to say from server import server. All right. Static method object is not callable. Really? Why not? All right, static method object is not callable. My guess is that something else is wrong. Let's see. All right, so just to make sure that the static method is not causing any issues, let's just comment it out, and we need to restart Sublime, and let's go to the test server and actually create an instance because whatever. All right. All right, so now it actually tells the actual message. I'm sure that it will work, but at least now it gives us the proper message. It says type error, get rid of misinfo, require position send OS2, redirect and handle. Server pi line 38. Okay, server pi line 38. Well, that's not helpful. Oh, did we indent it wrong? Yeah, we did. Needs to be over here. Okay. All right. Okay. Something else is wrong. Okay. OS2 URL is not defined in test server line 35. That's interesting. Line 35, OS2 URL. It's right here. What's your problem? Oh, again indentation. See, all of that is part of that function. Okay, I believe we don't need to restart Sublime if we fix the tests. All right, what 5 were given? Really? Test server line 35 in test round trip, which is here. All right, because it's I now remember, because it's not a static method now, we need to actually do the self thing. There we go. Another error. Really, object is now attribute assert equal line 28. Really? Assert equal. All right, so we got further because it waited for 2 seconds. Okay, but now it says global name server is not defined. That's a silly mistake, probably. Over here, shutdown server, we pass in the server. All right, yeah, see, that's the problem because it's not a static method anymore. We need to do this whole self thing, but I'm sure that it's gonna work with a static method. So let's put it back like this and do it like that. This I think this was one of the reasons why I decided to have it static, so that I don't have to pass around this whole self thing. Global name server is not defined. Really, server pi line 36. 36 server. It shouldn't be global, it's server. Okay, it's right here. What's your problem? Why not? Global name server is not defined. Well, it's not global. I'm passing it in over here, and it comes. Oh, Jesus! Seriously? You guys probably saw that already. Server. There we go. Yeah, as I told you before, 24th time is the charm. Waiting 2 seconds, and it's okay. It works. It works. Okay, so to recap, we're calling this method. Okay, we're telling it how to send an OS2 request, which in production will be open the browser and point it to the OS2 URL. Okay, we give it the redirect port and we tell it how to handle it. And in our case, how to handle is basically we just say, hey, is it actually going to give us back what we need as an argument to the handle function? Okay. So that's basically it for the server. Just one thing, every time you have something like this, block thread, you better have some sort of circuit breaker, some sort of thing that, some sort of timer that sort of waits for, I don't know, a minute or so, and then, make sure that this thread does not remain blocked. So what we're going to do today as the last thing is we're going to create such a circuit breaker. So when we call a block thread until Spotify responds, we're going to start a timer, and then when a certain time passes, we will send a request to ourselves, just so that the servers, doesn't block the current thread. And then because we run the whole thing in this loop, remember, like every 5 seconds we want to see, give us the current track. The next iteration is just going to realize, okay, hey, we still don't have a token, so we're just going to start the server again. So this will only happen if the user takes longer than whatever we specify here, let's say a minute, to log in, right? Or maybe there are some issues, maybe, I don't know, maybe Spotify server is down or something like this. So we're going to add a test. And it's just one test and one tiny method, and then we're done, okay? So the test is going to look like this. It's going to be called test circuit breaker. Test circuit breaker, okay? And it will have, it will start with the same thing. It will have OS2 URL and the redirect port, same as before. And it will have, the send OS2 request, right? This one. And it will actually assert the same thing. Okay. But over here, so the let me close that one. Okay, so over here we were actually waiting 2 seconds and then sending the response. We pretended that the Spotify REST API will actually send the response. Over here we're not going to do that, right? Because this is exactly what we're testing. We're just going to say don't do anything. Okay, so basically we're going to pretend like the Spotify server is dead, or maybe the user failed to input the correct login login information like for way too long or something. Okay. All right, and the rest of the test is actually the same, okay? So it's basically the whole thing again, okay? Let's close that actually. So we put it in here. Everything is the same. It's just that I always like to inject values. So we're also going to have a last parameter here. And it's going to be called, with a very long name, it's going to be, say, available duration for login in seconds, and we're gonna give it 2 seconds, right? So 2 seconds should be enough for that. Actually, no, it shouldn't be enough. So in this case, we're gonna give it a 5, so that we have enough time to do this whole round trip. And in this case, it doesn't really matter. We just don't want we don't want our test to run too long. So let's copy that and go to our server and insert it over here actually. Okay, and we're going to in this block block thread thing, right? It's over here. We're not just going to say handle request. We're actually going to create a circuit breaker, okay, which is just a timer. Okay, and by the way, we need to bring in the timer as we did before somewhere else. Threading, actually let's put it here, import timer. Okay. And the timer is going to use this variable, right? So in our test, we passed in 2 seconds. Okay, so this will be 2 seconds. And then we're just going to send an HTTP request to self. Okay, actually, pretty much the same as we were doing it over here. Here, send HTTP request to self. In fact, let's just copy that. Let's just copy that. It's just that. Oh, by the way, and also we need the import for that, right? Over here. Whoops. Over here. I'm sorry that it's going too fast, but I assume that this video is almost an hour by now. So we're just gonna do that. Sort this a little bit. Okay, so it's right here, and in this case it's not like that. Okay, and in this case this is production code, and because it's production code, we need to be a little bit more careful. Maybe there's a bug in this API right now or something else. So we're just gonna do that just in case. It's not gonna hurt, and that if it doesn't work, then it just doesn't work. This is a Python thing that just says just ignore the error. Okay, so again, we're waiting for a few seconds, and then we're going to send an HTTP request to ourselves. Okay, so we start the timer, or we start the circuit breaker. We start, and then we send the request, and then we cancel the timer. So if everything went well here, we just cancel the timer, right? If everything didn't went well and it just got stuck here, because blocking current thread means here, right? Blocking happens here, right? So this thing is not going to be executed until this thing is done. However, this thing will, because it's running on a different thread. Because the timer is basically an abstraction over threading. See, we imported threading, and that's it. So assuming we don't have any typos, we saved the server, we saved the tests, and let's restart Sublime. All right, and let's hope that it's all good. And of course there is an error. There is always an error. OAuth2 URL is not defined. What? Again, test server line 48. Test server line 48. Same stuff. I don't know. Maybe I'm copy pasting stuff wrong. And we're waiting 5 seconds, and we're waiting 2 seconds, and it's all good, right? So we wrote a server, and it is also protected, right? So we have a test for the round trip, we have a test for the circuit breaker, and we have a beautiful server which is only 50 lines long, with this fancy circuit breaker. Oh, and also let me just copy paste that. We can leave it like that and it's just gonna work fine, but I already wrote like a bunch of HTML, so I'm just gonna copy paste that over hold on, like that. Yeah, so this is a Python thing where if we introduce a string like that, then it will actually preserve all the line breaks and everything. Okay, and the title is going to be Sublime Spotify REST. Or actually, let's pretend that it's just Spotify. Let's say Spotify, and I stole an icon from Spotify. So if we take that, okay, let's copy that, and if we open that in the browser, it says file not found. Oh no. That ain't cool. Oh, because it's things that it's on the local, so it's http : / there we go. So this is the Spotify icon. Okay, I basically went to the Spotify API, and I looked at the code, and I just searched for So basically the page is going to, the title of the page is going to be Spotify, and the icon is going to look like Spotify. Maybe actually we're violating something here. I'm not sure. Please don't sue me for this. Yeah, and then we're going to say authorization success. You may close this tab now, and that's it, right? It's a very, 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 very simple HTML. Oh no, now our server is like 60 lines long, right? All right, so basically that's it for this video. In the next one, we're going to implement the rest of that, right? So we're going to implement this, like this actual functionality that checks, hey, do we already have a token? Is it already cached or not? And we're going to have the display current track title and basically all the wiring, but we're not going to do the actual calls to the Spotify API just yet. All right. So basically, the next video is going to be for OS 2. A little more, a little deeper, and for the main Spotify file, basically. So there will be a file called Spotify here, right? And it will in the future use another file called client. It's the one that is going to actually send the OS 2 requests and the ask for the current track and stuff. Okay, so again, the next video, more about OAuth 2 and the wiring of the main functionality, basically, of our plugin. All right, so let's commit it. cd config sublime-text 3 packages, sublime Spotify rest, git status. We have a bunch of stuff. We modified the settings. All right, yeah, we wrote the test for the toggle thing. Okay, so we didn't create, did we? Oh yeah, we did create new files. Okay, so add everything. So it's video 5. Added added a server, or the server, the server to handle the Spotify redirect response. Okay, commit, push. And my key was closed, and there we go, 8 commits. Video 5, what we did just now. So we created the server. We we removed one line from the settings manager. We have the tests for the server, and we implemented this test toggle for the settings manager. So as of right now, we have how many tests do we have? How many tests do we have? All right, we have 13 tests. Very lucky number. All right, so I hope you liked this video. Don't forget to like it, and see you next time.